everybody, and welcome back to Mechabellum. Today I wanted to take you through our build of the week. Given how tanks have been slowly giving a good showing of themselves in the meta, I wanted to go through some of the better tank builds that I found. Now, this is just the basics of the tank build. I'd set up like a little demonstration to show off some of the strengths and weaknesses of the tanks. I want to show you both the full extent that you can get with the tanks, the upgrades that I prefer to take with them, as well as their supporting units, as well as how you can counter the tank build. So first off, here's our sledgehammers. This is what I think is the bare minimum techs that really make a tank build come together, at least for myself while I'm playing on ladder. I love to have the electromagnetic shot on the tanks. They have good splash damage. There's 5 entities, so there's a chance that one of these tanks just like goes the wrong way, starts shooting at something else, and now I'm spreading out that electromagnetic shot. Really powerful ability. I love to have it in at least 1 or 2 of my units on any battle, normally Stormcallers and tanks for myself, possibly Wasps. I do like it on the Wasps. Mechanical Rage, this just turns your really slow tanks into something that can actually move down the field at a good clip, as well as takes that attack interval down significantly. Speed up to 14. Oh, I'll show you the specialists as well. Finally, we have the range enhancement. The tanks just need it. They have good range, but getting that range enhancement is really important for them. The 4th tech for myself is kind of interchangeable. I like to have the extra health just because normally tanks have to deal with single point damage as their counter, so I've been leaning more and more into the field maintenance after its most recent buff. However, you could fill in quite a few things here based on your play style, the extra damage, or there's a couple other techs here, whatever you feel works. For my specialist, I love to get the speed specialist on the tanks because all of a sudden your bumper cars turn into your race cars being your tanks. So I love having the speed specialist, and then the strike specialist. I'm going to show you how you can kind of develop the tank build from not only just this brick house in the front, but also to a really dangerous flanking build. Tanks with the range also give you really good cover on your flanks, especially if you pair them with Phoenix. So let's talk about their paired units really quickly. Fang are great. They're a good front line. They're multiple entities. In fact, I would almost always recommend you at least upgrade your Fang with 1 upgrade just so that they can start earning themselves some levels. Myself personally, I prefer to get the range enhancement or the mechanical rage first. However, if I'm dealing with a lot of single point damage, let's say a lot of snipers, I might opt for the shields. So kind of just put whatever in here. I view these as, again, really important techs for the Fang. With the tank build, I also like to get the armor-piercing rounds online, just in case the enemy chooses to go with a lot of steel balls. All of a sudden, my Fang become a somewhat good answer to the steel balls. Finally, I like to pair my tanks with a bare minimum of a couple of Phoenix. Phoenix with range are really great. They're good at protecting your flanks because they hit really hard. Not only that, they're fast. They can keep up with the tanks. And if necessary, I like to have the jump drive on my Phoenix so that they can just move around and engage different threats. Like right now, this Vulcan is way up in front of everybody else. I could grab the jump drive on my Phoenix, put all 3 Phoenix right here, have them snipe out the Vulcan, and that way I would know that this flank is going to go my way. I did pair up just kind of like a pretty usual army that you would see combat the tanks. Obviously, I've spent a lot more cash on this side of the field, so I'd expect this side of the field to win. But let's just take a look at how the tanks perform before I show you how I think this build can be improved, and then also how to counter it. So in go the tanks. Obviously, the little Fang are meant to just get absolutely munched, but they do extremely good damage against the Vulcan, and this is why I'd love to have that electromagnetic shot. Because the Vulcan got hit by it, it had to close the distance with my tanks, which means my tanks have a lot more time to shoot at it because they're already slowed down. And then my tanks have extra time to survive because they're not getting hit by a Vulcan. So it looks like it's pretty much an even split here. My Phoenix should win this for me, but that's kind of the play style of the tank. It's really, really good because it cuts down on the range. In fact, I'm sure you saw them start cutting down the range of these snipers as well. So let's evolve this build a little bit more. One thing that I really like to grab is a couple of hackers, especially if the heavy hacker specialist comes out. It really makes a difference just because those hackers move so much quicker and they have that extra HP. So let's grab the heavy hacker specialist and then set up what I believe is a really good way to play this build. So I always opt for at least level 2 hackers. Let's grab 3 of these bad boys. They're going right in the center here with the shields, as always, because, you know, hackers with shields, super powerful. Finally, I'd opt to grab some armor-piercing bullets on these little Fang, and I'd like to have the Fang kind of a couple more groups of them, preferably with the mechanical rage, but that really depends on what level of the game you're sitting at. Let's grab some level 2 of these boys. I like to position them kind of in the back here. One, they just help the Phoenix a ton if all of a sudden a wasp swarm or something like that becomes present. But this makes an extremely strong flanking force. Let's set that up right now. Let's grab another level 2 sledge, a hacker, and another thing of Fang. So this force right here can deal with basically anything in a microcosm. Obviously, there's a lot of things that can deal with this given enough time, but because units on the flank generally engage extremely quickly, having your units set up like this is great. Obviously, missiles would shut this down at least initially, but that's why I love to mix the hackers in with my flanking force. If I'm getting extremely zazzy, I might even put in a unit of Phoenix here, just because these 4 units complement each other so well, and they are so exceedingly aggressive. I'm going to set up a small counter for this here in a moment once those units spawn in. But this is great. Obviously, complementing it with some Stormcallers or a Melting Point or something is very powerful as well. But this is generally the point at which the game is over. You know, at this point, I've spent so much money. This is like round 15, or not round 15, probably closer to round 10 at this point, just the amount of points spent. So just be aware of that. This is kind of a late game build. It might be worth grabbing a couple extra tanks. With 2 or 3 extra units of tanks, you can really, really push out a lot more damage. In fact, I'll just grab another 2 units of tanks just because I also like to have these tanks lined up along the back line, or if I'm winning the flanks quite well, I might put some tanks and some Mustang paired together here as well. Honestly, the Fang are normally enough to deal with any air, but if your opponent makes a big transition, which we're about to do now, that can really mess it up. But before we make that transition to actually beat this, let's show you some of the things that it can deal with quite well. So normally, you know, this is not enough single point damage, so we might see a couple of fortresses come out. Fortresses with shields are extremely good. Also, fortresses with the Fang work very well against this, but let's just pop out a couple of fortresses here, just because that's exactly what we want. Let's say that my opponent also just puts a sentry missile here. It's because I don't want that flanking force to do too much right now. Let's also grab a couple more crawlers. Crawlers are really annoying for tanks to deal with, so I'd recommend grabbing them. And a couple of steel balls. Steel balls are great. They're really good killers on tanks. I like that they can split up. They do a good job. And you know what? Let's grab a unit of Wasp. Well, let's grab 2 units of Wasp here. Just kind of faking what an opponent might be doing if they didn't know a very good counter to this. So not quite as many points spent. Let's actually fix that a bit. Let's increase the range on these guys. Maybe give our crawlers actually the acid on crawlers is very good against the tank build. So why don't we do that now just to set up for what's to come later, and give this a whirl. Blammo. I hope that sentry missile is enough to take out the majority of these things. It should be. Yeah, there's just a hacker and some Phoenix left. They shouldn't be able to do much. So these hackers are great because they've absorbed a ton of damage for my Fang, which just allow the Fang to become the center of this fortress's shots, which gives time for the tanks to actually clear away the rest of the units. That way they can focus fire on those things that are important. The center is won quite well here. There's a lot of units coming back in that were kind of destabilized by that flank, and we'll show off the power of that flank in the next round once I set up the exact, or what I believe is a very good counter to the tank build. Tanks obviously did an extremely good job here, and you know, there isn't really a lot that can deal with the tanks. unless there's really good single point damage, which we're going to upgrade into, and you have a lot of good protection, because level 2, level 3 tanks do put out just a lot of damage. The tanks do a lot of damage. So let's switch this up a little bit and actually do what I would consider a clear win. So I'm just going to delete this side. It's a great tool. I love the testing grounds. Ah, crap. Be right back. Okay, so I've built kind of an anti-tank build here. This is really what we should be looking for. Yes, I know the spawning units didn't work out so great. I accidentally deleted one side of the field, but having the crawlers with acid is really important. Not only that, try if you can to strive to place your crawlers and things, at least have one unit of them in front of your giants. That way they can absorb initial fire, as well as allow your giants to kind of move into range. You don't need it, but I would recommend also getting the range enhancement on your fortress. That way they outrange the tanks, but it's not strictly necessary. The fortresses are kind of just here to absorb damage. Not only that, once the tanks hit them with the electromagnetic shock, it's going to lower their range anyway, so it's not really that important. It's good to have, don't get me wrong. It allows them to maybe clear away one extra tank, which over time can matter. But the real winners here are these level 2 Stormcallers and Snipers, importantly with the electromagnetic shot. Once your marksmen have this, every single tank that they hit slows down. They just become abysmal. An unupgraded tank is not a very good unit, at least in my opinion. They serve a purpose, but a unit without any tech upgrades is really not that great of a unit pretty much across the board, and that's why electromagnetic shot is so good, just because it takes that away. Not only that, it reduces the speed. So extremely powerful. Stormcallers are here to get rid of the shields, as well as get rid of all of the chaff units. They do fairly well against the tanks, but because these sledgehammers are moving quickly, the Stormcallers are very unlikely to hit them. Finally, we have just a wave of chaff units following in our steel balls. Steel balls are there to deal the damage that needs to be done to any of the remaining tanks, as well as absorb a lot of damage. Then we follow that in with some more Mustang and some more crawlers and some wasps. The goal isn't really to kill the tanks necessarily. Obviously, that's a great thing to do. But if we can eliminate all of the Fang or the Phoenix, then it's very likely that we'll just win because we have these wasps. And that's why I like to have one or two aerial units, but I specifically have been leaning more into the wasps because it's likely that you'll have one or two survive if you set yourself up well, and just winning a round by a couple hundred points really does add up. Of course, we do have these units spawning in. We'll demonstrate just how powerful they are as they actually spawn in very quickly with the Strike Specialist. I really like the Strike Specialist. It's very powerful. But let's show off the anti-tank build. So what's important here is that these Stormcallers do have the range. That way they can immediately start with a barrage, and that barrage should be enough to clear away the Fang in the initial hit. It's very, very important that that happens, because obviously we don't want these hackers getting online and capturing anything worthwhile. Now, the crawler positioning isn't great because it looks like some of our fortresses are getting hit by it. The flank actually did extremely well, and that's why I love it. Just that combined arms force is so powerful. But with everything that shoots up dead, besides these Phoenix, there's nothing else that can contend with this, and we're going to win by a huge portion for roughly the same amount of points spent. I didn't count, but maybe maybe we will see it counted. I also wanted to point out here that these marksmen do an extremely good job of countering Phoenix. If ever you have a problem with Phoenix, grab marksman with the electromagnetic shot. You can just depower the Phoenix. Even if those Phoenix are like a level or two ahead of your snipers, having them move so much slower is so important. Your snipers already have a lot more range than they do, so this will turn the range down even further, and you'll be able just to take them to Pound Town. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this quick look at the tank build. It's extremely powerful. This is kind of how you build it. This is how you beat it. Both the tank build itself and the counter are very expensive. So if you expect to be playing a very long game, then I'd recommend trying out the tank build. If you're more of a vicious fighter, I wouldn't. Tanks are very good, but you might find a little bit more use out of things like the Mustang Steel Ball or maybe some flying units. But hey, that's all to your playstyle. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you do, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'd love to do some more build crafting as well as theory crafting with you guys. Send in what builds you want me to try out, and I'd be happy to do so. Until the next time, guys. Bye.